Recently, I talked about what I thought were to be the top 10 best Kirby powers of all time, but for some reason, everyone on the planet decided to disagree with me. Some even said that my top 10 best powers video would be better as the top 10 worst powers video, which frankly is ridiculous, but to prove the haters wrong, today we're going to be going over the top 10 worst Kirby powers ever. So real quick, let's set some ground rules. I may be no Kirbyologist, but I've been playing Kirby since I was a wee little toddler, which means I'm at the very least familiar with the franchise, and more importantly, Kirby's ability to copy other things' abilities. I'm going to be ranking said abilities based on how useless they are, mixed with how much of a nuisance it is just to have. Of course, this list is going to be subjective, which means if you have some crazy 7-page argument you'd like to present to me, I'm just going to laugh at you. But with all that crap out of the way, let's look at the 10th worst Kirby power, which I've personally chosen to be Wing. At first glance, this actually looks like a great power because the design is cool and it seems fairly useful. The problem is that it's just an inferior version of other Kirby powers. Like, everything the Wing power is able to do can be done better somehow with another power. I don't hate this power up in all honesty, but something had to be at number 10, so give me a break. Also, in Kirby Air Ride, which is one of my favorite games of all time, this power gets rid of whatever star you're driving while the ability is active, which I do not like. Your star does come back, of course, once the ability is over, but if I'm gonna transform into something and lose my most efficient form of transportation, I'd rather just turn into the dang wheel, which would actually speed me up, unlike the Wing. But I guess now that I think about it, the Wing power does give Kirby the ability to fly, which he has always been in dire need of, so I might need to revise this video at some point down the line. But don't you dare think for a second that any of your idiotic comments will ever have any influence over that whatsoever. Alright, now there must have been some joker down over at HAL Laboratories who decided that the staff is an acceptable power for Kirby. Now this power is described as follows: become a staff-wielding martial artist and mow down your enemies. The product of a strange land, this staff is the ultimate telescoping weapon that extends to let you pole vault over some obstacles. Yeah, okay, but it's a stick. This power is just Kirby holding a stick, and that's the whole thing. Sure, he allegedly also suddenly learns martial arts or whatever, but he also learns that from like 10 other Kirby abilities, so I'm not buying it. Kirby is a powerful dude, but handing the guy a stick just seems insulting. The thing that really just doesn't make any sense is that if Kirby just decided to pick up any old stick off the ground, he would actually be more powerful than this stupid staff power lets him be. That might sound whack, but hear me out. If Kirby picked up a stick instead of absorbing the stick power, Kirby could still have his copy abilities all while wielding a stick that, according to HAL Laboratories, is powerful enough to be its own power. So yeah, number 9 is stick. It sucks. For number 8, we have the Needle ability, and my goodness gracious, I hope for Kirby's sake that the needle wasn't used before he absorbed it, because that could give Kirby AIDS. In all seriousness, this power isn't awful, but I don't like it. I've always thought this was a strange power when compared to all the others, but I was never able to put my finger on why until this very moment. First of all, this power is short-ranged. It's not hard to hit anything, but if you want to kill enemies with needles, you gotta run your little pink self all the way next to them just for the chance. Also, while using your needles, you can't move anywhere. You have to stand still and hope that you already hit your enemy or that they will walk directly into you while you're standing still. I don't know about you guys, but any Kirby power where you have to stand still and hope that an enemy decides to miraculously run directly into your spiky needles is a Kirby power that I don't like. Also, I just think it's gross how Kirby looks while he does that. I mean, what do you guys think? That's not normal, right? Maybe it's one of those weird trypophobia things, but this is just gross. I'm tired of looking at it. Let's move on. Number 7 is a power that reminds me a lot of that stick power-up, the umbrella power-up. I think it's technically called Parasol or something, but it's a darn umbrella and nothing else, okay? This thing is in pretty much every Kirby game, and it's just an umbrella. Sure, you can smack people with it, but so could you or me while in the possession of an umbrella. It's hard to even talk about this thing because it's only an umbrella. Its benefits to Kirby include being used as a tool to smack enemies and being used as a tool to fall slightly slower. Kirby can already fly by himself, which in my opinion makes this power just redundant. You guys may know this, but I used to love playing Kirby's Dream Land 3, and I still do from time to time. In that game, there's of course the umbrella power, but there's also a power called Broom. That's just a broom. I know you guys are probably expecting that one to be on this worst powers list at some point, but it's not, because I think that power is actually kind of funny. Kirby using a broom to sweep around or near his enemies in order to murder them with the dust is hilarious, regardless of how useless it may be. The umbrella, on the other hand, isn't anything. It's not funny or fun or even horrible, it's just annoying, if that. Also, have you ever played a Kirby game where it started raining? I don't think I have. Number 6 is the high jump power. Now, I'm not sure if you guys consider yourselves to be Kirby enthusiasts or not, but Kirby can fly. Now, I know the point of this power when it was originally introduced to the series was to make Kirby jump really high while also being able to break certain blocks in his path of jumping. But it's still stupid because that specific obstacle is the only situation you could possibly have a use for this power. Not to mention the fact that there's this other power called UFO, which would work just as well, actually would work better and be more fun. The logistics of giving a guy who's famous for being able to fly on his own a superpower where he can jump higher just seems ridiculous. Now, maybe I'm being absurd, maybe I'm being unreasonable, but I just don't think that anyone who's able to fly would have any interest in increasing their high jump range. Also, there is a jetpack power that was introduced much later, and I think that if they just tried to make some kind of jetpack power here instead, then they would have ended up with not only a much better power, but also a canonical lore with consistency. Because I mean, come on man, I can deal with Kirby fighting the most powerful beings in the universe time after time again, but not if you try convincing me that Kirby needs a special high jumping power. Even a power called Cape would have been better than this abomination. Here we are at the second half of the list, where the top 5 worst Kirby powers ever will be revealed very shortly. But first, I have to read this letter from the FCC for some kind of protocol or something, so here it goes. The following Kirby powers have been removed and replaced on the list due to complaints and regulations. Axis power. What? Who sent me this? To start off the worst of the worst Kirby powers, we probably have the least special power Kirby has ever had the opportunity to acquire, being metal. Look, I understand there are some areas of Kirby where you pretty much have to be this slow, heavy metal thing just to progress, but that doesn't hold any significance. Just because the game forces you to use a horrible copy ability doesn't suddenly make the copy ability not horrible. Also, I'm pretty sure everyone from the Mario franchise can also do this exact same thing, and it's not any better in those games either, trust me. I've heard some people say that they love this power, but I just don't get it. To each their own, of course, but I don't like when Kirby is slower, can't jump as high, falls faster, and wastes my time. It could just be me, sure, but I don't like it when a video game has a gimmick that makes everything you do much slower. I mean, am I crazy here, or should video games not give you powers that make it easier and faster for you to complete levels? Number 4 is a similar power of being rock. No, not you, Dwayne. This power is just like the metal power because it makes you slower and fall faster and everything like that, except this power stops you from moving entirely. I've always hated this power a lot because of course there are tons of beautifully functioning Kirby powers that actually do things to benefit the gameplay experience, and also I legitimately do not know how to discuss a power that does nothing except for turn you into a motionless rock. Human beings typically have fears of becoming an inanimate object because that's not a fun thing to become. I'm sure Kirby doesn't find turning into a rock to be an enjoyable activity. He just does it because the sadistic player presses the darned buttons to make him do that. This power is only ever useful in that obscure Kirby spin-off game called Super Smash Bros. Because you can catch your homies off guard with it every now and then. But even when you use it in that game, you don't just sit there and stay in your rock unless your controller dies or something like that. And God forbid if you do it on purpose and you do decide to just sit there while being a rock, everyone will just beat you to death until you're forced to go back to your original form. So yeah, basically every part of this power is awful. Who would want to be a rock? Number 3 is a power that must be a troll relative to other Kirby powers, but honestly, if I could choose any Kirby power to be able to use myself in real life, it might be this one. Of course, I'm talking about one of the most infamous Kirby powers, sleep. If you've ever been unfortunate enough to get this power by mistake, then you already know why I consider it to be one of the worst. As a matter of fact, you may be wondering why I don't consider it to be the absolute very worst power in the franchise, considering it not only has zero possible benefits to Kirby, but also that it actively harms you by making making Kirby fall asleep, forcing the player to sit there and wait for him to wake up. The reason I don't think this is the worst power to ever walk the earth though is because it's kind of funny. I mean, sure, I'm not laughing too hard when I'm playing Kirby alone and I get this thing, but it's funny to talk about with other Kirby players, and overall I'd say it's just a funny addition to the franchise. I mean, come on, look, he even has a sleeping cap. For number 2, we have kind of a weird one. The second worst Kirby power ever is King Dedede's power. Normally, King Dedede is the final boss, and even when he's not, you aren't able to absorb any of his powers, especially considering his power is also inhaling, so why would you even want to? But in the obscure Kirby spin-off game Super Smash Bros. Brawl, they introduced King Dedede as a playable character, which meant Kirby could actually try and eat King Dedede. While I can confirm to you guys that it is certainly possible, and Kirby actually does absorb King Dedede's power, except it sucks. Wait, no, I mean except it's horrible. King Dedede's power is the exact same as Kirby's natural ability when he doesn't have someone else's power, except for the fact that King Dedede is actually completely unable to absorb anybody else's powers. Which means that if you absorb King Dedede's power to use his version of the Super Inhale, you are literally just downgrading your normal attack so that you lose the option of absorbing powers. Sure, you could argue that King Dedede's is more powerful somehow, despite having no evidence to prove it, but even without Kirby stealing Dedede's power, he's able to do anything with his mouse that the king can, and then some. So unless you really enjoy barfing, there's no reason to ever absorb King Dedede's power. And you should not enjoy barfing, you freaks. It's finally time for the worst Kirby power of all time to be revealed. The worst power is the copy ability. I'm not talking about his default copy ability power, by the way, because I already put that in the top 10 best power, so that wouldn't even really make any sense. I'm talking about the ability he gets from those weird enemies called Tech. When Kirby eats one of these things, he gets a power called Copy. This power does give Kirby a cool looking cyborg thing on his face, but that's about the extent of anything good this power brings. Once you use your said copy ability on another enemy, that's it. You just get their powers as if you flat out ate them. Which begs the question, what is the point of this power? This literally adds nothing to the default state of Kirby other than filling up his copy ability slot, which isn't a good thing at all. Literally, if you take any amount of time to get this copy ability power as Kirby, only to end up getting another power later, every single second you spent obtaining the copy ability was wasted because it provided literally nothing outside of a quick smirk as a reaction to the cyborg add-on. If you want to have a cyborg Kirby, just give him a darn laser power and we'd be happy. Technically, because this power is pointless and not inherently bad, you could argue that it's better than some of the other terrible powers I've talked about earlier, but in my opinion, the absolute concrete obsoleteness of this power's entire concept boggles my mind to the point where I cannot physically put it anywhere other than the worst power in the game. It literally does nothing and that's it. The power is doing nothing. Why did the poor developers spend time coding and designing this dang thing? Those were what I consider to be the worst Kirby powers of all time, and I already know some of you guys disagree with me, so instead of arguing, just drop your own list down in the comments and I'll be sure to check them out. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Let me know what other Kirby videos or any other videos you'd like to see in the comments or on Discord, wherever. Just let me know. And until then, I'll see you guys next time. Leave me alone.